Dark and Darker features a variety of classes, all which feel unique and are incredibly fun to get into. In this video, I want to go over each class briefly, giving you a highlight of each of their strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully it will help you to make a decision on what you want to try out in the upcoming playtests and as the game enters early access, whenever that may be. Now, I don't want to go over every single ability in the game, as this video would be way too long-winded. Instead, I'm going to go over notable strengths and weaknesses to give you a general feel about how each class is played. So first up on the list, we have the Fighter. Now, the Fighter is possibly the best brawler in the game. The most common way that people play the Fighter is with a one-handed and a shield, but the Fighter is actually able to wield any weapon in the game.
Shut the door.
I'm fighting one.
Oh, he's dead.
They also have perks, which increase defense in various different ways, and a perk which gives them bonus armor rating from the equipment that they're wearing. Now, this makes them scale extremely well with good equipment. Now, due to the Fighter's capability of wielding any weapon in the game, this gives them a lot of versatility and variety in their gameplay. It's also worth noting that the Fighter is able to wield a bow, which is, most would feel, one of the strongest tactics in the game right now. Bows are incredibly useful for clearing PvE, as well as just starting off fights in PvP. Some of the more notable abilities that the Fighter has is extra speed for a short duration, and an ability which will give them a large portion of their HP over a short amount of time. Now, while the Fighter works extremely well as a frontline in any group, it is capable of solo play, but it's probably not one of the best ones. But it is worth noting that with its ability to heal himself, Fighter can hold their own in a solo situation. And next up, we have the Barbarian. Now, the Barbarian is the other frontline melee fighter in the game, but it lacks the defense of the Fighter. The Barbarian's focus is mostly a glass cannon melee, at the expense of its defense. It's worth noting that while it doesn't have high defense, it does feature the highest health pool in the game, which can be both a blessing and a curse. The highest health pool in the game does help it to survive a little bit longer, but it takes forever to heal up using either heals, bandages, or potions, which is one of the big drawbacks of having that massive health pool. Now, one of the biggest draws for me to play the Barbarian is that it can break literally everything in the game. Now, most characters are capable of breaking crates and barrels, but the Barbarian can charge through doors and chests using a two-handed weapon. This enables the Barbarian to be one of the fastest clearers and looters in the game, but it doesn't do it very quietly. The Barbarian works extremely well in group situations when paired up with a Cleric or a Wizard, and it's also worth noting that it's probably one of the strongest to verse a Wizard. It has a magic resist perk that gives it an extra 100 magic resist.
You have no power here, Gandalf the Grey.
When selecting this perk, it is probably one of the biggest counters to a Wizard. Another small note to make about the Barbarian is it doesn't exactly require armor. There are perks that help it to run without a chest piece, and the default kit for a Barbarian doesn't come with a chest piece. So if you're looking to charge around headfirst through the dungeon, the Barbarian might be your play. I do want to note that this class is possibly one of the weakest solo classes in the game, since it lacks the ability to heal itself or be quiet in any way, shape, or form. So just keep that in mind when attempting to play this class solo. It is one of the more difficult options. All right, and next up on our list is the Rogue. Now, the Rogue focuses mostly on stealth and ambush gameplay. It features perks to lower the sound of their footsteps and can completely go invisible for long periods of time. It's worth noting that these perks and abilities can greatly help the Rogue in clearing or get around PvE. It makes it one of the best at sneaking by the second floor if it has to. Now, one of the cons to the Rogue is that it suffers a lot in the early game. Without good gear or daggers, the Rogue can take quite a while to take down PvE or kill opponents. Now, while this can make it hard to get started as a Rogue, it is worth noting that the Rogue has one of the best capabilities of obtaining good gear. With one of the best interaction speeds and a lockpicking perk, the Rogue is the absolute king of getting good loot. Now, the Rogue is probably one of the best picks in group play if you already have a caster and a fighter. It works really well as just an ambush scout and can enable the group to get some really good loot. It's also one of the best solo classes in the game, so if your friends are busy, make sure to give the Rogue a try. Number 4 on the list is the Ranger. Now, the Ranger features mostly bows and ranged gameplay, but it's also important to state that the Ranger is capable of wielding a spear as well as a deployable barrier shield. These are incredibly useful tools, especially the spear, which has mostly a straight poking animation, which makes it incredibly good at fighting opponents in doorways, which is where the majority of PvP conflicts begin. I don't think we brought ale this time. No way. No! Why? Along with these tools, the Ranger can also deploy a Hunter Trap, which is incredibly useful as it completely immobilizes opponents. This is useful on the second floor when needing to immobilize strong enemies, as well as PvP opponents. If an opponent is caught in this trap, they have to straight look down and disable the trap, which gives you plenty of time to take them down. When utilized properly, these traps can create a good, reliable way to escape, as you'll know where they are in dark corridors and enemies won't. I think most people agree that right now, the Ranger is the undisputed king of clearing PvE. With the ability to either take down quickly or even cheese certain mobs, they're able to get through the second or third floor with relative ease, as long as you know what you're dealing with. This makes the Ranger one of the best solo classes currently in the game, as well as a good addition to almost any duo or trio. Fifth on the list is the Wizard. Now, the Wizard's focus is mostly strong offensive spells that can be used well in team play or just used for good utility in solo play. These spells vary between things like arcane missiles, AoE fireballs, or temporary invisibility and a speed boost. Now, with all these options, the Wizard comes with a fairly complex spell system, which prevents you from bringing every spell into the dungeon at a time. So it pretty much requires you to know what would compose a good spell kit. With this complex system, I would say that the Wizard has quite a strong learning curve, not to mention the ability to harm allies or yourself with your own spells.
Spooky over here? Wait, are you dead?
So if played improperly, the Wizard could potentially do more harm than good. When done correctly, this class has great synergy with melee using its haste and invis buffs. I would say that the Wizard is an excellent choice in a party comp, though I would note that the Wizard is capable of solo play. I should note though that while it is capable of solo play, the skill required to do so is extremely high. So I wouldn't recommend this unless you're up for an extremely high challenge. And last on our list, we have the Cleric. Now the Cleric features mostly heals, buffs, and potentially melee combat. It is one of, if not the strongest pick in almost any group situation. I would say that the Cleric has two main forms of gameplay. You're either going to be standing behind your teammates, giving them heals, shields, and buffs, or potentially you're going to be a frontline fighter using some of the Cleric's perks to buff your melee capabilities. The Cleric is pretty decent at PvE clear, as it also has quite a few abilities that are focused directly on clearing PvE. And I would say that the Cleric is also capable of solo play, but it is extremely slow. It has one of the slowest interaction speeds, as well as lacks a lot of utility when fighting enemy players. Most melee Cleric fights involve popping a ton of buffs right before charging in and hoping to swing down your opponents before the buffs wear off. But all in all, the Cleric has a lot of versatility and a lot of different variety, being able to swap between being a support and a melee. Overall, Cleric is one of the strongest classes in the game, and you'll likely want to try this out if you enjoy supporting teammates in a fight. And that about wraps up all of the classes that we currently have in Dark and Darker. Now, the devs have teased quite a bit that they have a pretty long list of classes that they plan to add to this game. So in the near future, before or after the game launches into early access, we're going to see quite a few additions to the class roster here. If you haven't already tried Dark and Darker out, highly recommend giving it a go. There is a playtest coming up. The next playtest is on February 6th, 2023. And I believe it lasts about a week. And if you haven't already checked out, we have a few other videos on Dark and Darker if you're curious on what the game is, or looking for a few tips when starting out. You can check out some of my prior vids on the game. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to see more, feel free to subscribe. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. You guys have a great day.